I'm Brooke Lanier, and I think art is a great way of sharing my favorite things with other people so that you guys can enjoy them as well. And yeah, Gio said that art was about empathy, and I completely agree. It's a way of sharing what's important to us. So um, I take a lot of photographs as a way of taking notes, but eventually I got to the point where I took so many photographs that I could not possibly, there was no way that I could fathomably paint all of the things that I wanted to paint in my life. And so I realized that a lot of them involved boats and docks and water, and that harbor structures and boats are like natural collages. They clearly don't belong in that place, but they are also like specifically for being on the water. Like these boats, like they're so angular, and everything going on around them is so organic. But by building these things, we can walk on the water, which is very fun. Um, and so I started cutting out kind of the greatest hits parts of these photos and remixing them and being like, well, you know, there's a drainage ditch over there and I don't really like that, or like there's a porta potty and we don't need that, but here's all the things that I like and I'm going to put them all together. And looking for all of the patterns and colors that unite things despite being from disparate places or times. So these two paintings have scenes from water on a pond where my dad grew up in Georgia, and a lake where I spent a lot of time growing up in Minnesota. And even though they're very far apart and the photos were taken at different seasons, that there's a comforting pattern of familiar forms. And you can see the movement coming through with the waves that line up in this direction, but there's also waves that are bouncing off the shore in this direction. So you have to think about what the water is reacting to and what the energy is coming from. And that these grasses direct you around as well. And this, you get to be on top of the dock looking out, but this one, you're kind of crouched down and looking underneath the dock. So that's kind of a fun thing to do as well. So I notice more things about water the longer I look at it. And I spent a lot of time looking at water when I was younger because I would go fishing with my family. And a lot of fishing does not involve fish at all. And it involves sitting in a boat and waiting for something to happen. But the thing that is happening is all around you, and there's all these interesting things if you choose to be interested in them. And so I noticed that in the clear water, if you look down, you can see the weeds and things that are beneath the surface. But the farther out, the more you see the color of the water and the amplitude of the waves if there is chop on the water. But the farther out you go, the more you see the reflection of the sky or whatever is over the top of it. And you can tell that this is not a very big body of water because you can see the reflection of the trees over here, whereas there is more vastness here. And in these ones, you can tell that this is a very big place because you can't see anything out there at all. That we don't get a division between the earth and the sky. We don't know if that is sky. Where are we? I don't know, but we have a place to stand. And there's some boats if you feel like going out. So, can you guys see these? Okay, I wasn't sure because I'm like in the corner. you know, it's entirely possible for me to stand in front of the thing and then you can't see through me because I'm a better door than a window. Um, so so I think it's really interesting how these geometric shapes frame the natural world, and they draw our attention in to these very patterned areas. And you may have become curious about my eccentric accessories. And I am functionally blind in my right eye, but it tries to argue with my other eye and say that it can drive, and it gives me a headache. So I'm telling it to take a time out, take a nap. But so because I had such terrible vision and spent a lot of time swimming as a kid, I and don't have like triangulating vision. I have terrible depth perception, and I'm bad at sports other than swimming. Good at swimming. But it means that rather than seeing in a panorama like most people, I see in a photo stitch, and I see things one thing at a time and sort of piece them together. But also, when I'm walking around the lake without my glasses on, I either see big, colorful shapes, ta-da, or I see things that are like little details because I'm like, oh, well, what can we see here? It's all up in my business. So that ends up in my aesthetic. And I'm also really interested in the physical evidence of the history of place. So I was really fascinated by going to Apalachicola and seeing these fishing boats, because you can see all of the different decisions that previous owners or previous seasons, they have decided, well, I would like a peach boat. And somebody else said, I do not like your peach boat. I would like this boat to be red, or I would like this boat to be blue. And it's like all of the pile of decisions, and then a decade of bad parking, and like scratching longitudinally, and then from the waves going up and down, you get that sort of scuffing. And then you can see just the pile of decisions. And so I replicated that by putting on very thick paint in layers and layers and layers, and then scratching through so that you can see the layers behind. And if you look at these up close and you look at the edges, you can see all of the different layers of paint, which is kind of fun. But I think a lot about the physical properties of the paint and the different types of meaning that you can give to the physical object of the painting by the way that you apply the materials. Like, for instance, this is really thick paint that I applied with a really crusty brush that got really crusty because it was a great big brush that I was using to move around a lot of really thick paint. And I hate washing those because it takes 1,000 years. And so it got really crusty because I just kept putting it off. But that made it really good for painting these really thick, kind of trowel-like streaky marks and leaving a lot of raised marks in the paint, which once it dried, I put contrasting colors over the top and brought out kind of a wood grain, whereas the water I painted with a much more fluid paint and used a thinner paint and more translucent pigments so you can see the luminosity of the primer underneath. And the areas that you probably think were painted last because they seem like they're on top are actually painted first, because I wanted this yellow of the grass, it's this green, this yellow here, to have a glow to it. And the only way to do that was to have the thin paint and then to paint all of the darker layers around it. And that required a lot of patience and a lot of tiny brushes, because I had to blend really carefully and preserve those sharp shapes, but also to continue the pattern and the movement. So those are all things that you can see. And I called these Harbor View return paintings because I had started the Harbor View series before and then took time off of it and like did a bunch of other things, including this series of paintings, the landscapes with interjections. But then during the pandemic, I didn't go to my studio for a month because I was afraid of the commute. And so I was making these like 3x4-inch watercolors on a coffee table. And then when I finally went back to my studio, I was like, aha, all of the paint. Use all of the paint and all of the colors and put it on with a trowel. And so this is my return to that. And it was also my return to the harbor. I started walking more along the Delaware River, which is about a mile from my studio, and learning more and more about the historic ships. And I eventually started volunteering to help restore one of them and like getting involved with all of these ship nerds. And then I started like getting really up close and personal with these ships and making paintings of the ships. And then I, through my art, was contacted by the SS United States Conservancy, who liked my paintings of their boat, and so they invited me to tour. So I got to go tour their ship 3 times and made a bunch of paintings of their ship. So through art, all of these other people are sharing their favorite things with me, and that's very exciting. So I hope that my showing you all these little things will make you pay closer attention to all of the little dings and patterns and whatnot in your life. So thank you very much for listening.